All right. Hi, guys. I am Mary Poplin with Imagineer Systems, and this is IBC 2013. We're really happy to have you here. We're going to be going over Mocha Pro's Academy Award-winning planar tracker. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what planar tracking is, how it works, and why you care. So let's get started here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up a project here. We're going to talk a little bit about why planar tracking is a superior way of tracking. All right, let's say that we want to track this screen over here. This would normally be a very difficult track, and the reason that this would be a normally very difficult track is because there's not a whole lot of data here to hold on to. It gets very blurry and it rotates quite a bunch. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use Mocha, and we're going to look for a frame that's pretty crisp. And what we're going to do is we are going to take a spline, and we're just going to draw it right around this object. Now what Mocha is going to do is Mocha is going to follow this object over time, because it's tracking a percentage of pixels inside of that spline, okay? It's not looking for points, features, or point clouds. What it's looking for is a pattern of pixels that is moving relative to one another. So when I say a pattern of pixels moving relative to one another, what I mean, okay, is pixels that are essentially all moving in the same direction, and that's all Mocha needs. But Mocha ignores things that are not relevant. So, for instance, Mocha ignores the rain and the noise moving over this because it is not worried about that sort of stuff. So what can you do with that? Well, you can do a lot of cool stuff with this, not the least of which is you can basically start making surfaces, and from here what you can do is you can insert objects on top of other things. So in this case, we're putting a Mocha logo on the screen, and you can see that it will just follow through the shot like there's no problem. Now, we can export this tracking data as a number of things. What we can do is we can export to After Effects corner pins and transform data. We can also export to Assimilate Scratch, Autodesk, Avid, Boris, Digital Fusion, Final Cut, Motion, Nuke, Quantel, and Shake, okay? So we can pretty much export to everything from Mocha Pro. And if we can't export to something that you need from Mocha Pro, talk to us about it. We really love your feedback. Now we can also export our shape data, okay? So when we export our shape data, we can do combustion G-masks, flame G-masks, Nuke Roto Paint nodes, Nuke Roto nodes, Shake Roto shapes, Mocha shape data for After Effects, and that comes in as a spline as an effect. And we can also do Mocha shape data for Final Cut. If that doesn't work for you and you have something custom, you can go to File, Export Rendered Shapes, and you can export your shapes as black and white mattes with motion blur or as color mattes so you don't have to render out as many passes. Okay, so why do you care about planar tracking? Well, you know, like I said, it's Academy Award-winning planar tracking. That might be enough to care about it, but if you don't care enough about it because of that, let me tell you why. And the main reason is because it improves your workflow. So let's talk a little bit about that. When I say improve your workflow, like, can I give you some tangible numbers? Yeah, I can do that. So here's the thing. Mocha can cut your roto time in half, and here's why. I'll show you the shot here that I've rotoed. So I have here this mats. We're going to show all the mats. I have here this shot of Spider-Man that Legend 3D was nice enough to give us, and we've rotoed this shot. Now let me show you a little bit about how we roto in Mocha. Okay, Mocha cuts your roto time in half because we cut your keyframes down to a third. Here's how that works. I look for an area of high detail, and I start splitting Spider-Man up at the joints here, okay? Our subject. We're splitting our subject up at the joints. We're using X-splines. I like X-splines because you relax for curves and you pull tight for corners, just like this, as opposed to having to deal with handlebars all the time. We're going to turn our mats off so we can see what we're doing here as far as the edge goes. And we're going to align our shape more or less how we want it on this object. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and track this through the shot. So I'm going to track this backwards. And you see Mocha's going to hang on to this. Now it's not going to do a perfect job. And the reason that it's not going to do a perfect job is because Mocha is your roto assistant, okay? It's up to you, the artist, to make it look great, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this shape using our new transform tool. Well, it's not that new. It's only new in V3. But V3 is, you know, V3 is new for a lot of people. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this shape so we get a nice natural motion. And it's going to tween between these two keyframes. So what we're going to do is we're just going to adjust this where it's the most off. And by the most off, I mean where is the most difference between one keyframe and the next. Okay, these are principles of animation. All right. So we want to make sure that we tween correctly. Now here we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to correct this shape. All right, so we're just going to come in here. And we're going to do this. Now, you guys should make sure you get your badges scanned because we're giving away one free copy of Mocha Pro. And if you want that copy, the only way to enter to win is to get your badge scanned. So make sure you do that. We're also having a 25% off sale during the show, so you might want to make sure you get to that. All right, now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, again, tween between these. We're going to look for the areas of the most divergence, okay? And so what we'll end up with is very quickly, we will end up with some really nice roto shapes where we're keyframing every 5 to 10 keyframes as opposed to keyframing every 1 to 2, okay? So this is how we save you time in roto. And again, you can export this to all sorts of programs. So let's move on and let's talk a little bit about some of the other really cool things that Mocha can do, okay? One of the things that our users wanted to know was they wanted to know if they could get our 2.5D planar data into 3D space, okay? So what do we mean by that, okay? What we mean by that is we have here this track on this tree. Hold on, let me go ahead and... What I mean by that is we have here this track on this tree, okay? So we're going to track this forward, and I'm not going to actually make you sit through the whole track. Suffice to say, it's tracked, okay? And we want to make this data into 3D data. So what we do is we go to our camera solver, and I have my track, and I say, hey, Mocha, I want you to solve this for 3D space. So what I have to do is I have to tell it what kind of camera shot this is. Now, I can leave it on auto, and Mocha will do its best guess, but that will take longer, and I would rather just, be speedy and be intelligent about it. So we have 3 different types of shots that we've pretty much broken all camera types into. And here's what they are. Pan, tilt, zoom is just a camera on a tripod, and it's panning, tilting, or zooming. So we've got that. I think we have that handled. Small parallax and large parallax should cover any other type of shot. Small parallax is going to be cameras in the distance looking at objects very far away, so the parallax is small. Okay. A large parallax is a closer camera, closer objects. The parallax is large. Okay. Medium and close-up shots are always going to be large parallax. Landscape shots are going to tend to be small parallax, okay? From here, we're going to just click pan, tilt, zoom. We only need 1 layer to solve a pan, tilt, zoom shot. So if your camera's on a tripod and it's not moving through space, only 1 layer will do. If it is not that way, then you need 2 non-coplanar layers. And by 2 non-coplanar layers, I mean layers that are not like on top of the same table or something like that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to decide my focal length and hit solve. Mocha is going to think about it, and then it's going to give me a solve quality down here. Anything above a 70 is considered a good solve, but I don't like to work below 90. So we're going to go ahead and export this camera data. We can export this camera data as After Effects 3D motion data, as FBX data, that's generic FBX data that goes to things like Maya and Cinema 4D, or we can export to specific Nuke FBX data, and that exports to read geo nodes and camera nodes, so make sure that you put them in your composite properly. And we do hit film composite shots, all right? I'm going to do After Effects. We're just going to copy this to the clipboard, and I'm going to jump over to After Effects, and I'm going to open up. All right, so I'm going to open up my After Effects shot. Now let's talk a little bit about what we've done here. Okay, what we've done is we've pasted in our camera, so we go to Edit, Paste Mocha Camera. What this will do is this will spit in a animated camera, okay? And it will give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nulls. So 1 for all 4 corners of your surface tool and 1 for the center null. All right. Now all I've done is I've come in here and I've hooked up a instance of Andrew Kramer's element effect. Right. It's a plugin for After Effects, and it puts 3D objects into a After Effects scene. And I have added my X and Y positions for the null that I wanted to hook this 3D object up to. So X, Y, and Z. Okay. Now from here, I've just gone ahead and added a light because I just want to make sure that this matches the lighting. And we hit play, and very, very quickly, we have a 3D object in an After Effects file based on a Mocha track that took about 2 seconds, all right? Now, the reason you might want to care about this is because let's say you are a motion graphics artist or a title artist or something like that. We're going to be really good for putting 3D objects, particle effects, motion graphics, and titles into your shot. So let's show you a little bit more complex shot. I'm going to open up a little bit more of a difficult track. So we're going to go to our 3D solver, and we're going to open up this. Because obviously a simple pan is very quick and easy to do. But what do you do when you have something that's a little bit more difficult? Well, in this case, we have a floor track that we have done. Because this is a handheld shot, okay? And this is a DSLR, so it's a little wobbly. So this is going to be a little bit more difficult to solve, okay? So we've done our floor track, all right? And we've done our wall track. Okay, and you can see what shapes we've used. We've grabbed this part of the wall. We've avoided the dog. For the floor, we grabbed a couple of different sections to make sure we got a nice, accurate solve. Okay, and again, with everything in Mocha, The modules in Mocha are only as good as the track that you have created, so make sure that your tracks look really, really good, okay? So this track looks rock solid. I'm going to select both of these layers, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our camera solver, and we're going to decide what kind of shot this is. And based on what I said before, right, pan, tilt, zoom is on a tripod. Small parallax tends to be landscape, so this would make this a large parallax shot. So we're going to go ahead and hit large parallax, decide on our focal length. Now, I know that this was shot with a 50mm lens, so it's going to be between 35 and 70, but 35 and 70 is a good guess for most shots anyway. All right, we're going to go ahead and hit solve. And what Mocha is going to do is Mocha is going to think about the solve up here, and you see it's going to take a little bit longer because it's comparing to 2 layers, but it still doesn't take very long. And down here we get a solve quality of 99%. So what do we do with this? We do the same exact thing. We export our camera data. In this case, we're going to export After Effects motion data again. We're going to just hop right over to After Effects right quick and open up our file. Open Recent Projects. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop some text here into the scene. So we have dropped some text into here. We have pasted in our moving camera. And again, our nulls don't move, okay? So what we've done is we have gone ahead and we have hooked up our text, okay, to our nulls. So we've just made sure that the position of this text here has been changed to the static position of my nulls, because the objects that you move into After Effects need to be hooked up to the tracks that you made to move properly in the scene. Now, if I want to finish this shot, I'm going to take some roto, I'm going to drop it into the shot to make this dog look like it's actually above this background object in 3D space. So we're just going to pull this layer down. Okay, we're going to go back to Mocha. I'm going to turn off my background layers, and I'm going to turn on my roto layers that I made. So you can tell, again, that Mocha is really good for roto. I'm going to explain a little bit about that in that we have 2 keyframes on that dog's ear, and everything else is what Mocha has animated. So you can see, again, this is how you save yourself time. We're going to go export our shape data. We're going to do Mocha shape data for After Effects, copy to the clipboard. We're going to go back to After Effects, make sure we're on the first frame of our clip, okay, and we're going to go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask. And now it's moving properly. All right, guys, we're going to move on from here, all right? And I'm going to start talking about some of our bread and butter, okay? Now, one of the things that Mocha is really good at, because Mocha is a planar tracker, all right, is we are really good at solving objects that move in a planar way that don't necessarily have tracking markers on them. So let's talk a little bit about that. We also have the ability to solve for lens curves, so let's talk a little bit about that first. Mocha can look at straight lines in a scene. Okay, so what that will do is that will go ahead and look at straight lines, and we will solve based on the straight lines of the shot and solve for the curve. Now, it's not going to look at this, and it's not going to say this is a 55mm lens. It's going to say, look at the curve of this shot. This is what I need to do to make it straight. So how that works is we ask Mocha to locate every line in this shot that it thinks needs to be straight. So we say, locate lines. Mocha says every hard edge in here should probably be straight. And I'm like, well, that's a computer answer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you an artist answer. So we're going to say this is the reference point that you want to use. We do in for new line. We connect the dots, in for new line, in for new line, and we connect the dots and in for new line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use these to solve. So we're going to do a 1-parameter solve, which is a normal distortion, and we're going to hit calibrate. And now you can see that we have solved for the lens in the shot, all right? From here, we're going to track this. So I'm going to go to my phone object, and we're just going to go ahead and show you what we've done here. Now, we have a surface tool in here that we can move, and this will move along with our track. And what we've done is we've drawn a shape around the outside edge of this phone and these 2 fingers here because we want to anchor this. What we're avoiding is all of this reflection area and these fingers, but it doesn't matter because Mocha is still going to give us all of the information for the entire plane, because what Mocha is doing is it's looking at the differences between these pixels, these, and these, and it is giving us that tilt information based on that. We do not need tracking markers. We do not need corners in order to get proper corner pins, okay? And we don't care much about blur or noise either. All right, now, if I want to finish this shot, there's some really cool things I can do. I can go to my Insert tab, and I can make sure that my motion blur is on. What we're going to do is we're going to change this screen to an iPhone screen. We are going to change our matte clip to some previously rotoed finger information here. All right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and take our opacity down to about a 0.3, because what I want is I want to preserve the reflection information that I have in here. And we are, again, going to make sure motion blur is on, turn our overlays off, and we're going to hit render forward. All right, so what we end up with is we end up with a really nice looking insert that we can drop as a very quick pass into our composite. Now, we don't have to do it that way. If we want to do this on our own by inserting tools into our composites, what we can do is we can go to our lens tool. We can export our lens data as Mocha lens data for After Effects, which is an effect that will paste into After Effects and distort or undistort footage based on our lens. Or we can export it as a distortion map clip, which is just an RGB value. It's called an ST map or a distortion map that will go into Nuke or Fusion or anything like that, all right? And we just save that. And we can then take our corner pin, and we can export our corner pin and put the warp over the top and add motion blur and a comp, and but I don't really want to mess with that, so I just use the pass, okay? Because the insert tab actually renders out our shots with their own motion blur, their own alpha channel, and their own warp, okay? We can also do some really cool stuff in the insert tab, like use the warp tool. So the warp tool is actually a pretty cool tool. It will warp a mesh based on what's going on in the shot. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to show you guys a very cool, well, my favorite tool, which is the remove tool, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the remove. All right, we're opening this up. A lot of times what will happen is people will shoot something and they will realize that they got something in camera that needs to come out of the shot. Now, in this case, what we've got is we have some offensive language on the side of this car, okay? And this offensive language needs to be toned down a little bit. We'll make it a little less offensive, okay? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to track the side of the car. And you can actually see that we've already tracked the side of the car. We've already showed you how Mocha tracks work. I think we all get it. You draw a spline. The track follows the shot, okay? And everything in Mocha is a child of the track. So the track pulls the spline along with it unless you tell it not to, okay? So this is what our background track looks like. And our background track is pretty cool. And the reason our background track is pretty cool is because what it does is it tells us how to remove this, okay? So this is the how that we're going to remove things, and this is what we're going to remove. So we've just drawn a spline around the object we want to remove, and we have drawn a spline and tracked the background. This foreground does not need to be tracked at all. In fact, this one is linked to this track itself, okay? But the background must be tracked. We're going to go to our Remove tab. We're going to click on our Remove layer. What we're going to do is we're going to find an area of this shot that looks really nice and crisp, okay? Now, here's what we're going to do and what I've already done, all right? I've already actually come in here and created a clean plate for this, but if we had to make this from scratch, we would hit Create Clean Plate right here. It's just this button here. And what that would do is that would save a TIFF. Now, that TIFF we could open up in Photoshop, all right? And in Photoshop, what we would have is we would have this TIFF to paint out. Now, I believe everybody here knows how to use the clone tool, okay? So we're going to assume you know how to use the clone tool, and we're going to say this is what our shot ended up looking like. If it'll open. There we go. Open recent. And we're going to do clean plate. All right, so we've cloned this out. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to drop that into the shot. So we have to put this back in at frame 93 because 93 is the frame we took it from. If we don't, it'll be offset by that amount. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to use Interpolation Illumination modeling, and the reason I'm going to do that is because that's going to actually match our smoke over the top. It's a little bit more memory intensive, but it ends up looking really good. And we're also going to use clean plates exclusively. Let's show you what that looks like. I'm going to turn overlays off and hit render forward. And what we have is we have this shape being matched to the pixels around it, because what Mocha is doing is it's taking that clean plate and it is changing every single pixel value within that shape based on what's going on around it. Now, to finish this shot, I would take this into a compositing program. I would take the shape that I used to define it, and I would blend the original plate with my clean plate and match the grain, because I'm only using one plate to get this information repeated, which means the grain is going to be frozen. That's not ideal. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and show you what the final render looks like. This is what our final render looks like, okay? So we end up, and this is where I'm really proud of Mocha, we end up even matching things that are already in the shot. Like, our image is over here, and we still match the up and down value change of the 10 on the side, and we match the smoke as it moves over that. So this is how you save yourself time. You save yourself tons and tons of time using Mocha's remove tool, all right? Now, moving right along, one of the things people ask us about all the time is, what do you do if the camera crew is in the shot? It's the same sort of thing. It's not necessarily glued to the object, but it works the exact same way. What we do is we go ahead and we track a background. In this case, we have tracked the area that we want to remove, okay? And we have defined the area that we want to remove, okay? Now, all we have to do from here is the same exact thing. We make sure that we have a clean plate. In this case, I made a clean plate at frame 34 where I painted the object out. Okay, that looks exactly like this. And we'll just show it to you. We've just gone ahead and painted the object out. Now, here's the thing to note. Uh-oh, zoomed in too far. Here's the thing to note about reflections. You need to leave hard edges in reflections when you paint them out. If you don't, you're going to end up with something that looks a little weird, okay? So think about your painting. Think about hard and soft edges. Think about, you know, painting class in college. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to use clean plates exclusively, and we're going to use linear illumination modeling this time because we don't need the value to change that much. So it's fine for everything to be brought up and down based on what's inside the spline. Turn overlays off and hit render forward. And again, because we're only using a single clean plate, we're going to want to take this into After Effects or Nuke or something like that and blend it with the original plate and match the grain. So what we end up with is something that looks exactly like this. All right, and nobody's ever going to notice that in a million years, but what you are going to notice is that there is no longer a crew member inside this shot, all right? Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is our stabilize tool. We have a pretty artistic stabilize tool, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the cool things that Mocha does. So Mocha has a very interesting stabilize tool, and what it does is it stabilizes based on any track in the shot. So I can stabilize based on the track of this dog here, which I don't recommend because the dog is very bouncy, you know, or I can stabilize based on the ground track, which I do recommend, okay? Now, here's the thing about Mocha tracks, and this is very important to note. This spline over here is only where the track is looking. Okay, the track is what is driving everything else. So Mocha is reading every pixel that moves underneath this spline, and it is continuing the track without it. It doesn't matter how this changes. If you grasp that about Mocha, then you grasp planar tracking, because planar tracking is just looking for information that is moving in the same direction. A texture that's going one way, all right? So, now, and that means like any plane. So the front of your face, the side of your face, like the top of your arm, anything like that, okay? Now, we track one plane at a time, though. So we're not worried about that. We're not worried about blur. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to our Stabilize tab, and I'm going to stabilize this shot based on my ground track. I'm going to turn the ground off, though, so you don't have to look at it, so we can focus on the shot. I could try to stabilize all motion, but that wouldn't be very wise. Because it would be so cropped in that it wouldn't be useful because our camera's moving too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say stabilize X and Y. I want you to take most of the bounce out of this. So we're going to go ahead and use a maximum of 5 frames smoothing, okay? And that means we're going to take the bounce out. So if 5 frames bounce like this, we're going to try to take the bounce out of those 5 frames, okay? But we're still going to get some movement. So we're going to go ahead and hit play. And what we've got is we've got a much more steady cam look. Now, we don't want to lock this totally down because when you shoot something, you end up with camera and motion blur and like maybe some jelly or anything like that in the shot. We want to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the film, so we don't want to make that kind of stuff obvious. So if you lock down the shot too completely, you run a risk of leaving motion blur inside of a still image, and that always looks weird, okay? So you just want to smooth everything out. Now, this will work for all kinds of things. You can use this to stabilize things like this shot, or you can use it to say you shot a documentary and you want to stabilize somebody's face because the camera guy is way too off kilter. You can do that. So it's very, very useful. Now, this is Mocha Pro. We are an Academy Award-winning planar tracking software. I'm pretty sure we invented the thing, you know. And we are Imagineer Systems. I am Mary Poplin. I am our Imagineer Systems product specialist based out of LA. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Please take some of our pens. They're fabulous. Support VFX and all that good stuff. And again, this is Mocha Pro. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This is IBC 2013.